Welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, some from all over the county too, so that's really great. I'm on a countdown to spring. How about you? We've had a freezing January, a January thaw, and now it's cold again. So welcome to the February 2nd Sunday Garden Forum. My name is Linda Schreiber. Our garden forums offer great gardening tips to get us inspired for the growing season to come. I'm going to go through a little housekeeping and a few announcements before we introduce our speaker. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Our thanks go to Beth Fisher, Autumn, and the Iowa City Public Library staff for hosting the presentations and providing our presenters with technical assistance. I also want to thank Judy Terry, the Press Citizen garden columnist, for her coverage this week of our program, and also Cindy Haddish, Homegrown Iowa, for her coverage. Project Green was formed in 1968. Our nonprofit organization has devoted resources and countless volunteer hours to beautifying green spaces and educating the public about conservation practices and the environment. Beginning the first Monday in May through most of October, our volunteers help plant and maintain Project Green Gardens at 820 Park Road. These garden gurus help out from 9 to 11. It's a great opportunity to meet fellow gardeners, exchange information and tips, and have the satisfaction of helping our community. There's a sign-up sheet in the back of the room to indicate that you're interested in helping out. Our Open Gardens Weekend 2025 will be held earlier this year, Saturday and Sunday, June 28th and 29th. Please consider offering your garden or nominating another garden. This annual activity features a variety of gardens and welcomes visitors with no admission charge, thanks to the generosity of our gardeners and our sponsors. This botanical tour is a delight to the senses, with the potential to become a tourism event for the region. We have our first 2025 sponsor, Sustainable Landscape Solutions. Watch for details about these activities on our website and social media. Project Green retired its annual and very successful plant sale in 2018, and we now rely on financial contributions to enable us to continue our work. Your support is greatly appreciated, and donations may be made in 3 ways: on our website at projectgreen.org, through the Community Foundation of Johnson County to our endowment fund, and via the City of Iowa City's Green Fund. Today, we'll follow the format of our previous forums. Our speaker will present for 45 minutes to an hour. Then we'll take a break. You're encouraged to have a beverage in the back of the room. We ask our in-house audience to write out your questions during the break. There's a clipboard right here. We do this because our program is live streamed and audience members can't hear the questions without a microphone. So now let's get started. I'm pleased to welcome our 2025 garden speaker, Kari Pohl. Did I say that
Karelyn.
right? Karelyn.
All good.
Okay. Creating a pollinator microprairie in your landscape. Iowa has one of the most altered landscapes on earth. 93% of Iowa's land is dedicated solely to monocrops that feed livestock and act as a gasoline additive. Kari is going to give us the confidence to create a native sanctuary in whatever space you have available, making it possible to give back to pollinators that are now endangered. She's been involved in gardening for many years, starting with small containers and raised beds. She's passionate about sustainable gardening and supporting pollinators, and is working to develop her acre of land into a homestead. She has a BA in biology from the University of Northern Iowa, an MA from Montana State University-Bozeman, and she regularly attends classes and workshops to expand her knowledge and expertise. She became a Linn County Master Gardener in 2018. I've attended her classes at the Linn County Winter Garden Fair and believe you will find her gardening knowledge and presentation outstanding. Let's welcome Kari.
Hello everybody, welcome out today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about microprairies. As mentioned, I've been doing this for several years. I give lots of talks about all kinds of different things, so if there's anything gardening related that you have a question about, I probably have some sort of answer. But let's get started on microprairies. So the first thing I always like to mention when talking about prairies is that prairies are our natural history. Prairies are what used to exist here before anybody moved into the state of Iowa. More than half of the landmass between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains is considered a prairie ecosystem. So where did they all go? Well, we know the answer to that. Lots of farming, lots of agricultural purposes. Approximately 93% of the state has been transformed for agricultural purposes. In fact, Iowa has the most transformed landscape of any state, meaning that we have more land diverted to, I don't want to say unnatural settings, but not its natural settings. Only 4% is composed of residential or city property, with only 3% being public or conserved land. And I got those metrics just about 2 years ago. It might even be more at this point, but or maybe we're going in the other direction. I'm not sure, but I should probably look that up and get that updated. So why are we building small prairies on our own? Well, we want to help preserve that natural heritage, that cultural heritage. There is a book series, famous TV series called Little House on the Prairie. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. But where are those prairies? Okay, they don't really exist anymore. There are tons of public prairies across the state, and that is absolutely wonderful. But even more of that prairie back, a lot of effort has gone into the last several years of putting buffer spaces around crops that water can be hopefully purified before it goes back into our lakes, back into our streams, rivers, wherever it is that water is going. So what is a pocket prairie or a microprairie? You've probably heard either of those two terms. It's using plants of the local ecosystem, so things that have been growing in the area for hundreds of years, okay? They are natural to the area. It's often less than 1 acre, but there's really no definition as to what the minimum or maximum of a microprairie is. So at my first house that I purchased in 2016, I actually had 3x3 raised beds. As mentioned, I started in raised beds and container gardening, and that was my microprairie, was the 3x3 square. Not very large, very micro. So really, it's whatever space it is that you have that you can work this into your garden system. There's tons of different ways you can do prairies too. It's really up to your own preferential tastes. Maybe you live in a neighborhood that has an HOA and has regulations for what you can do and can't do. So there's tons of different options for putting some of these plants back in the system without having to go really wild with it, okay? Obviously, our first option here, if we did go something more formal where I'm going to be walking through it, I might have a little bit more work in this guy versus the one on the other side you can see is more just letting it grow, letting it do its own thing, okay? So keep that in mind when you are building your prairie. How much work do you want to put into it? Because if you want that nice formal look, you're going to be putting a little more work into it. So I mentioned the pollinators and bringing those pollinators back into our ecosystems. So let's talk about those pollinators real quick. I always get asked this when I show this presentation. There is no Iowa bumblebee identification guide. I wish there was. But this was the coolest one I could find, so I threw it up there. More than 80% of the world's flowering plants need some sort of pollinator to reproduce. That is a lot of your vegetables. A lot of things that you're eating, in your home require pollinators for their reproduction. Without that, we don't have those vegetables, right? The monarch alone has plummeted in the last 25 years from over 1 billion to now around 34 million in population. That is kind of sad. You may know about some of the no-mow efforts that a lot of places have been putting into effect, especially in areas of highway. I believe it's Highway 35 that goes north and south that's considered the Monarch Highway. They don't mow or use chemicals along the middle of the break in the highway as a way to hopefully give back to those pollinators. There are around 300 known bee species in Iowa, and only 7 of those were recently discovered. So when you think about bees, everybody always thinks, oh, a big fat bumblebee, right? No, there's tons of different types of bees. All of these bees have their own plants that they prefer, their own ways that they live. So we really have to take into account all of the differences between these different bees and different pollinators. I always like to talk about protected plants too. Adding protected plants to your prairie can be an awesome way to bring back some of the lower populated species of pollinators as well as bird life. There are approximately 1 out of 8 species birds will face extinction. So just thinking about the birds in our system as well, okay? Because those guys, while it may not seem like it, they are giving back to a lot of stuff in the ecosystem. So looking at our, quote, circle of life, we all know it's not a circle, it's more like a web, okay? Everything's kind of intermingled, everything kind of interacts with something else. Without those pollinator plants, we have completely broken this web, okay? That is dead center in the middle of where we need pretty much everything. Without those plants, we don't have bugs. Without those bugs, we don't have snakes or birds or rabbits or mice or anything else, okay? Not so natural wildlife. In fact, all of these things here are things that no longer exist in the state of Iowa. Some of them extinct, some of them because they've been driven out. Each one of these animals naturally resides in the state of Iowa, though according to the Iowa Audubon Society, there are 29 vertebrate species that have been declared extinct in Iowa alone, and another 37 that are considered endangered. So we're really trying to give back to those populations. Now I can see why, you know, you might not want wolves in the area, you might not want bears in the area, but fish and mussels clean the water for us, okay? If you know anything about mussels, they're wonderful for cleaning up water supplies. So if those guys are going extinct, that's bad for us. As mentioned before, not only are we giving back to those pollinators, but we're giving back to the water quality, okay? The root systems retain tons of moisture and nutrients. So if you take a look at this photo over here, you can see all the way over here on the left, you have your Kentucky bluegrass. You see how deep those roots go? Not very. All of these pollinator plants have roots that go feet below the dirt. This creates aeration in the system. It allows pockets for some of that moisture to get back into the water table, okay? Without that, it becomes compact and the water runs right off, okay? We're not getting that water back into our ecosystem like we think we are. So those root systems are very important to retain moisture, and they also put nutrients back into the soil. Many root systems are in collaboration with different fungi and different microbes that really, really give back to the quality of your soil. Well, if we look at the state of Iowa, we are, with our current farming practices, depleting our one great resource, okay? Everybody knows that, you know, Iowa exports corn, soybeans, pork, right? All three of those need soil, right? Even the pork, you got to feed the pigs, right? Our most valuable asset in the state of Iowa is our soil. It's so rich and so wonderful for growing crops. ISU research suggests that approximately 12 million tons of organic carbon are lost each year due to nutrient-hungry plants like corn and soybeans. Now, we have, in the last 100 years, adopted several practices that have helped to reverse some of this. Crop rotation is a good one. Not to mention, we're not only losing our soil, we're losing tons of stuff in the soil, those good bugs that we want, okay? I know a lot of people think of bugs, they think, you know, creepy crawly, but we have tons of what I like to call good guys, okay? They're really helping us, they're really helping out the ecosystem and that stuff. So we really have to consider that. As mentioned previously, another method of helping with this is creating buffer zones. You may be familiar with that, you may not. And essentially what that is taking areas just around the outside of your crops and planting those pollinator plants to hopefully catch any fertilizer or runoff that might be coming off of your soil with that. Hopefully also reducing the amount of soil that we lose. So now that we talked about what a prairie is, the history of prairies, why they're important, let's talk about starting your prairie, okay? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to plan it out, okay? I don't know about you guys, but I don't really jump into anything until I kind of know what it is in my mind that I'm trying to do. Otherwise, I end up with a not so good project. So planning really well, preparing the area, we're going to select our plants, and then once you have it all in place, really all there is to do is to maintain that prairie system. So we're going to talk about ways to do all of those things. So let's talk about planning, okay? Prairies are large open fields. If you go into a prairie, there's hardly any trees or brush. It's primarily grasses, plants, flowers. That's all that's there. Virtually nothing shady. So if you're putting in a prairie, you're really looking at someplace that's hopefully visible with lots of sun, okay? Think about the size that you want to make your prairie. Do you have a team that's going to be helping you with this? As an educator, I took some of my classrooms out, and we would, you know, do some restoration in some areas. So that, you know, I had a team of young, able people who were helping me with what I was doing. If you don't have that, really consider the size of this prairie that you're wanting to make. Second thing, obviously, also super important is what is your budget, okay? Most of us, we don't want to put, you know, thousands of dollars into this. We want to have a nice looking garden, but we want to do it for relatively cheap, right? So let's talk about plants and seeds a little bit later and how you can make that budget go further. Let's get into it. This is actually just a drawing that I got off of, oh crap, now I can't remember. But it shows you a really good indication of what a prairie could look like if you're trying to do something more formal. If you choose bunching plants, you can keep that prairie more formal, a lot better off. If you really know where everything's going to go. Again, going back to that planning, what space do I have? What do I want to put in that space? I'm really thinking that out before I start putting anything down, okay? Now, I always like to tell people, beware of seed mixes that are not vetted, okay? A lot of places now, if they say that it's a pollinator mix, you're probably fine. But there was a large debacle in 2017. Some company, won't name them, gave away millions of seed packets to save the bees. However, those seeds included forget-me-nots, which are banned as a noxious weed in both Connecticut and Massachusetts. It included the California poppy, which is listed as an invasive exotic pest plant. These were chosen because of their pollen and nectar content, and not necessarily because they were natives. So by sending these out across the United States, they actually sent out a lot of non-native plants that are kind of troublesome, that they'll start to take over, and they're really hard to get rid of. So again, just making sure if you are going with seeds, you're going with a reputable seed vendor, and not just picking up any old packet of seeds, okay? Oh, this doesn't work anymore, I should tell you that. Don't scan it. But the link is right here, actually. The University of Iowa actually has a wonderful resource that provides details about every prairie plant you could want to know about, okay? If you go to that website, what it does is you can select shade, you can select moisture content, you can select all kinds of different things, and it'll tell you, based on your input, what plants you can use. If you're looking at a specific plant, it will tell you exactly what that plant needs to thrive. Again, that's on the University of Iowa website, and it's free to get to, and it's a wonderful resource. I need to get that QR code updated so you guys can actually scan it, but if you want to, I see a couple people still writing the link, so I'll wait for a sec. Actually, I'll grab a drink. Okay. So, as I mentioned, that website gives you a wonderful list of things that you can put in different types of areas. Most of Iowa is considered a long grass prairie, so a lot of the things that we're going to be putting into our prairies are grasses, okay? Whenever you see a prairie, you're going to see lots of grasses, lots of different types of flowers, lots of different types of bushes and stuff. But really what we want to look at is the water content of your soil, okay? The water content is probably the most important part of deciding what it is that you're going to put there. If you're going at the bottom of a hill, you're probably going to have sitting water for a period of the year, but then you could also have a drought during a period of the year. So you would need a plant that can deal with sitting water, but can also deal with dry periods. Now there's plenty of those to go around. You just have to know what it is that you're working with. Lots of your dry plants. So if you're thinking towards the top of the hill, those are the things that when it starts to get pretty dry come August, September, October, those things aren't going to last as well, okay? Especially if you're trying to grow those wet plants in an area that gets dry, you might have to supplement with water. So those are things to consider. Where it is on your slope that you're going to be planting might indicate what type of environment you're going to have. Are you going to have a dry, a mesic, which is kind of in the middle, or more of like a wetland? Because there is a difference between a dry prairie and a wetland prairie. Site preparations is really the first thing you have to do, okay? So we've planned our prairie out. We kind of know what it is that we're going to put in there, sure. But how do I start? How do I get started? So there's tons of different ways that you can prepare a site for gardening. You may have tried some of these on your own, or maybe you want to try a new one because you're like, that's too hard. I don't want to do that. As you can see right here, I have an image of a sod cutter. Sod cutters you can rent from pretty much any hardware store. It's a very good way to get the grass out and just start fresh. So that's very manually intensive, so really consider what it is you're signing up for when you do that part. If you're thinking that I can't do manually intensive, I want to do it a little bit easier, you can lay down layers of cardboard over the course of 2 months. 8 weeks is approximately the time that piece of land needs to be covered and in the dark to kill off pretty much all of the thing that's in that area. And it can't be in the winter, it has to be while things are actively growing. So that come this spring, if you have an area that you're thinking you want to turn into a microprairie, now would be a wonderful time to set out some cardboard, and then in a couple of months you're going to have a nice new spot to put your whatever it is you're wanting to put there. Organic herbicides are an option. They're not the most effective, but they exist and are an option. And then a last resort, if you're thinking, I really, really want to get something in this year, but I don't have time, and I forgot to cover it with cardboard, this is an option. Chemical herbicides, not my preference, okay? Because those herbicides tend to get soaked up by different plants, and especially really, really early in the season, we're exposing our pollinators to that, and we don't want that, okay? So it is a last resort, but it is an option. Once a chemical herbicide is used, it's exposed to sunlight and temperature fluctuations, and its half-life is about 3 to 5 days. But if you are planting actual plants, it's recommended not to plant them until 2 to 3 weeks after use. So if that's the direction you go, just be very careful not to plant before that time. Otherwise, those plants that you're putting in there are soaking up that chemical herbicide. You don't want that, because it's either going to kill them or it's going to kill your pollinators. And that's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do here. Another good one, in fact, this is my favorite option, and this is what I have done in the past. It's very manually intensive, but like I said, that's kind of just what you're signing up for if you go with this direction. So tilling every couple of weeks for an entire summer. This only works if it's level and not subject to erosion. Do not do this on a hillside. You can use a smother crop. Buckwheat is actually a really good smother crop. What it does is it grows fast, it grows thick, and it grows pretty tall. And then once it has flowered, we don't want it to go to seed. We just mow it down, and it's basically smothered everything else underneath it. And at that point, your site is ready to go. So that is my preference, especially with the tilling, getting all those weed seeds up, making sure that those guys germinate and they get out of there before you start fresh with something else. Another good option, as I mentioned, you can cover the ground for approximately 7 to 10 weeks. It is the lowest effort. It's the greatest bang for your buck. You can do it with cardboard, you can do it with hay, you can do it with tarps. If you're doing tarps, make sure you lay it down nicely, okay? That tarp is going to become a wind sail if it gets windy enough, and it will end up in your neighbor's yard. I know from experience. So if you are going with a tarp, just make sure you weigh it down nicely or stake it down nicely, whatever it is you're doing. If you use this method, also consider removing the grass and the crown. When you are using this method, there is essentially a layer of dead grass remaining. And what that does is if you are trying to spread seed, it reduces the contact of the seed with the actual soil. So if you do go this route, it is a lot better for germination if you come in and remove the dead grass. You can do it with a rake, you can do it with a shovel, it doesn't really matter. It usually comes up pretty easy once it's dead. So let's talk about species selection. We are including native grasses. As I mentioned earlier, Iowa was primarily long grass prairie before we turned it into lots of crops and other stuff. So these grasses are providing structure. They're great roosting sites for birds and dragonflies and other types of things that are going to be in and around our prairie system. They have deep roots, as you saw earlier in that image that I showed you. It has great larva food for butterflies. They'll eat up the leaves as much as possible, and great bird food, because when those go to seed, our birds like to come in and eat those, and then those get spread somewhere else. Most people want to grow a prairie because they want some of the nice looking flowers, which is what your typical or microprairie has. A lot more flowers and consists of about 30 to 50% grasses, but you got to have those grasses in there for the structure. Okay, the grasses are pretty much what make the prairie. Your dominant grasses that we're going to use in a prairie, and these aren't your only options. There's other options out there, but these are my favorites. Yellow Indian grass is a really wonderful one for broad spread. It doesn't bunch. It kind of spreads over the whole area really nicely. Little blue stem, you've probably seen all over the place. People love to use little blue stem in landscaping because it does bunch. So when you're making your little fancy, sidewalk things, particularly in downtown Iowa City, of course we see them everywhere. Those little bunching plants that you see all over the place, a lot of them are probably little blue stem because that's just how they grow. Big blue stem is a little less bunchy, but still kind of bunches up in the same manner. It's a lot taller. It will tend to fall over in the fall, so a lot of people prefer to use the little one versus the big one because of that. And then our last one on the list, again, these are my 4 favorites. They're not the only 4 that you have to use. Canada wild rye is a very easy one to put in pretty much anywhere you are putting in a microprairie. So we want to stagger also those flowers that we are putting into our prairie. So it's primarily grasses, some flowers, but what flowers are we going to put in there? We want spring bloomers, we want summer bloomers, we want fall bloomers, we want the spectrum of everything. So when you're planning, try to plan for a succession of blooms throughout the summer. That resource I showed you earlier, the University of Iowa website, actually does a very wonderful job of also telling you approximately when it's mature. So again, just a wonderful resource if you're starting to look up all of the plants that you are thinking that you want to put in. Keeping trees and other brush out is super important. It will choke out the sun for your prairie, and we don't want that. We want it as sunny as possible because most of those plants thrive in full sunlight. There are some shady prairie plants, but not very many. So what's really cool is that a lot of your different bloomers will alter their growth habits based on their surroundings. So while these are typically considered low bloomers, I have seen some pretty tall butterfly milkweed. So these guys, wonderful plants to have if you're thinking you don't want it to get too tall. I've seen a lot of people try to put microprairies in the strip between the sidewalk and the road. There are, well, first off, not the best option because all of the chemicals that go into the road, you're thinking like your tires are leaving stuff behind. So not the best option, but if that is something you're looking into, these are a couple of really good options for something like that. So it has to be low to the ground because nothing can be over 3 feet tall, okay? I know that because I did that at my old house, and I was told anything within 15 feet of the road has to be under 3 feet tall, okay? So if that's something that you're working with, it's not impossible, but just considering the kind of plants that you're going to have to put there to be within those regulations, essentially. If you don't really care about the height, you might want to put in some taller summer bloomers. Echinacea is a wonderful one. Compass plant, I love when compass plant pops in the summer and you can see them all over the ditches. It's my favorite thing. Coreopsis, coneflower is a really good one. Sunflowers can be native, but I would warn against most types of sunflowers that you can choose at the store are considered cultivars. Now, if you don't know what a cultivar is, what that means is that it has been selected for specific traits, okay? A lot of sunflowers, especially the mammoth sunflowers, the really big ones that everybody loves, were selected for their seed content, okay? They were selected for growing the most amount of sunflowers for sunflower seed production, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that that guy is something that we want in our garden, okay? Especially because it does have so many seeds that it produces, it can very, very quickly take over. One of my boxes, when I first started, I was not aware of this. I had, oh gosh, it's been a minute, 7 of those 3x3 boxes that I mentioned previously. One of them had sunflowers in it, and nothing ever else grew in it after that. It was only sunflowers. They very, very quickly take over, especially those mammoth sunflowers. They can grow up to 15 feet tall. They create their own tiny micro ecosystem within the sunflowers, because I don't know if I thought it was the coolest thing, but again, not great for our pollinators, that in this 3x3 batch of sunflowers, you could stick your arm in and it was just such a neat thing, but also at the same time not something we want for our garden, because that's not giving much back to the pollinators. These are huge stalks that don't do anything. So considering wet prairies, if you have something, especially at the bottom of a hill, it tends to gather water, it tends to maybe have a pool of water for a certain time of the year. Maybe you're in a floodplain. Maybe you're close to the river. Maybe you're close to a creek or something like that. These are really, really good flowers and things that can grow in wet prairies. They like having their feet wet, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their roots have to be wet all the time. Oh, yeah, I should mention that. I sometimes say feet wet, but I'm really talking about their roots. Dry to medium prairies, this is going to be more sandy soils, okay? Something that drains very quickly, doesn't hold on to moisture. You're going to be looking at a very different type of prairie system, right? We're going to have things that need to deal with extended periods of drought, that are suited to deal with that. And again, there is a very long list of things that are native to the area that are wonderful for growing in these conditions, because they were growing for, thousands of years before we got here. So why not plant them again? Some of your advantages of using native plants is that they will survive the range of climatic conditions that we have, because they have, like I said, for thousands of years. Those limited water resources, especially because our summers are unpredictable, okay? Last year we had probably the wettest summer I've seen in a really long time. And then the couple years prior we had, droughts come August, September, and there was virtually no water coming in. So having plants that can withstand that range and knowing that you're not going to have to put as much work into it because they can live through those harsh conditions. Considering keeping your prairie closer to somewhere that you might be able to provide extra water is an option, but again, if you can plant ahead and just have things that can deal with low water, that's really going to be your best bet. So when you're planting, there's a couple different options. We mentioned doing seed, and we mentioned doing with plant. So let's talk a little bit about that. So if you plant live plants, that is going to be your more expensive option, okay? I don't know if you guys have been to the stores lately, but a lot of those plants are like $20, $30 a piece, even more depending on what it is you're getting. And that is a wonderful way to get started, especially if, you know, if you've never tried it before, if you're thinking, I don't know how to start seeds or something like that. It's a good option, but it is going to be pretty pricey, okay? The other method, I like to call it the chicken feed method, and this is my preferred way to do it, is essentially sprinkling the seeds onto the bare dirt and then walking across it and kind of stomping the seeds into the ground. I don't know if you've ever watched a chicken feed, but they do a thing called scratching, where they scratch the dirt to try to get bugs and stuff underneath it, or other reasons for like dust baths and stuff like that. So it's very similar to the way that chickens feed, in that you're just going to throw the seeds on the ground, only instead of picking up the seeds, you're going to put them back in the dirt. One of my favorite things to do with kids, especially if you are working with I usually do this with well, I did back in the day do it with my students. This was something that I tried with them about 2 years ago. Worked wonderfully. I would recommend, and we got to throw them out in the yard. They got to see how their seed balls progressed, essentially. I know a few years ago, Ragbri did a huge thing where they gave everybody seed balls and had them throw them out as they were riding bikes to hopefully get more pollinator plants across the state. So if you're not looking for like a formal prairie and you're looking for more of like a, hey, let's give back to, you know, the community or something like that, this could be a really good option for you, okay? Just making those, and you can give them away to your friends. You can give them away to whoever. And then lastly, so we've planned it, we've made it. Now we have all of our plants in. The maintenance is extremely important, especially for the first couple of years, okay? The first 2 years really is the only time you're ever going to want to mow or anything. After that, it should be sufficiently good without any interference. When you are mowing, we're mowing in essentially the winter, because that's when everything's dead. That's when we're not going to ruin any of our plants. We can set up regular maintenance work days, especially if you're thinking, you know, I have a large prairie and I want to work, you know, maybe I'm working with a group of kids. We could set up, you know, once a week. We go out and just check on the prairie, make sure that, you know, there's no garbage around, or there's no things in there that aren't supposed to be in there. And then lastly, especially at the end of the season, if you're thinking you want to expand, a really good cheap option to expand is deadheading the flowers. And what that is once the flowers have died, they start to produce their seeds and they dry up, and you can collect those seeds and you can put them somewhere else, okay? In fact, I know Johnson County actually does this every year. They have seed gathering events. The county conservation has a seed bank that if you are interested in getting, you know, free seed, you can reach out to the Johnson County Conservation. I spent, I think, 2 summers working with them on some of their projects, and it's a really, really good resource to have in the area as well. So going back to earlier, I mentioned we really want to vet those seeds, make sure that we're not having any exotic weeds or aggressive plants coming into the area and taking over. So really just learning to recognize what those are, okay? A lot of them are pretty easy to get rid of. I don't know if you've ever worked with mullein. It's the tall thing that, it shoots up the second year. It's a biennial. If you catch it in its first year, actually, the best way to get rid of it is to just take a shovel and cut the root off, because it has one big old taproot that goes all the way down, and if you sever it, then it's dead. So that's one very aggressive plant that we actually see all over the state now. That is actually a Russian native, not an Iowa native. Mullein. It has the, if you ever find it in the wild, it sends up this stalk of yellow flowers, and it's sometimes referred to as hiker's toilet paper because the leaves are really soft. I'll let you imagine that one. Another really great thing that we can do with our prairie, and I love to do this as well, as I mentioned, I'm an educator. I was an educator, I still educate. I'm educating you today, hopefully. So tell your prairie story, okay? By naming the prairie and putting out information, you're spreading that information to other people who maybe don't have that information. Maybe they never grew up around prairies, or they never, grew up around gardens or anything. In my old house, as I mentioned, I had a bunch of 3x3 raised beds. About a block away was an elementary school, and I actually had a teacher come ask me if she could bring her kids over one day. And I said, sure, why not? It's a wonderful learning opportunity. Tell your prairie story. Put that information out there. I always love to tell people the whys of what I'm doing, how it is that I'm doing it, bringing wildlife back into the area. Again, water purification, water retention. There's tons and tons of reasons why we're doing this. Okay. In fact, I can't think of one reason why not. When you build a prairie, you might even start to see things that you hadn't seen before, okay? Bugs that you never really recognized, or birds that are new to your area. What you're doing is you're bringing some of that natural ecosystem back into your yard, back into your area, okay? There are lots of wonderful places out there that you can actually record these observations. Oh man, I need to put the bird one up. There is a bird one that my husband has. I forget what it's called, but it is really, really cool. With all this AI stuff, what they can do with this stuff now is it takes a recording. Merlin? Yes, thank you, thank you. So Merlin, what it does is it takes a recording and it tells you all of the birds that it hears, but then not only that, this was created by a university that then sends that data to say, oh, well, we know there's these birds in this specific area, okay? That's really awesome information to be collecting for, research opportunities, for knowledge opportunities. There's tons of great places where you can share this information, that people actually take this information and put it into, data banks that are used for lots of different purposes, okay? Very important information to have. So I like to record my observations. I used to do it through iNaturalist. I have a couple of Facebook groups that I'm a part of now. And then again, my husband's always using that Merlin. I feel like every time we're outside, he's got his phone listening to some birds. And that's all I have. So if you have any questions directly for myself, obviously we're going to be around for a second. But here's my email. If you ever want to email me, I'm happy to share any of this information with you. If you have just general questions, I know the Linn County Master Gardeners have a hotline. I don't know about Johnson County, but they basically service the whole state, so it doesn't really matter if you guys have one. So either way, you can get some answers for whatever it is that you're looking for.
Thanks to Kari, that was really interesting, particularly for us who volunteer for Project Green. We installed a small prairie. It was 60 foot by 20 feet last year, and I see many people here in the audience today who helped with that. So make a plan to stop out at the Project Green Gardens and check that out. Beth put some library books over here that are to do with the prairie, but she reminds you that you have to take them into the library to check them out before you walk out the door with them. You mentioned registering or naming your garden. Doug Ptolemy has a book, Bringing Nature Home, and he is promoting homegrown natural parks, I believe. And that's a great way to just, even if it's a pocket prairie, a small prairie, list it out there. What he's hoping to do is get little spots all over the United States to equal X many million acres. I can't remember.
Called? Homegrown natural parks?
Homegrown natural parks. And what it will be hopeful in doing is giving pollinators, you know, little resting spots on their journeys. So that's my little plug there for that. So please have refreshments. If you have questions, come up and write them down.
So I guess I'll just go down the list. Somebody asked, what are organic herbicides names? So that would be things that you have around the house that can kill things. So that would be something like vinegar or baking soda is another good one. Epsom salt, cornstarch is a very good additive for preventing seeds from germinating. Corn gluten. Yep. Corn gluten. Yep. So a natural or organic herbicide is really just anything that you might be able to just buy at a grocery store that you can use as a. There are some like store-bought more organic herbicides that you can get, but those are really just going to be based off of the things that we just listed. Stop seeds, how to keep the birds from getting them. So when you're doing the chicken feed method, you are moving the dirt around with the seeds, essentially. Ideally, if you could till beforehand, you would have lots of loose dirt that the seeds would then get covered in. So that would be my primary answer for that. For your seed stomping method is having a good amount of loose dirt on the top so that you can get those seeds buried just a little bit, enough for the birds not to be able to find them. Will my presentation be available online?
YouTube, Iowa City Public Library. You'll find it there.
YouTube, Iowa City Public Library. And then if you want me to send you my presentation, email me. I can send it to you. Who will take the seeds from my dead-headed flowers? I was going to suggest seed banks or seed libraries. A lot of local libraries have adapted a seed library where they have some stocks of seeds that they get sometimes from manufacturers and sometimes just from exchanges from people in their own gardens. She mentioned that Coralville, Swisher, and Tiffin have one, and they're going to be doing, hopefully, a soft launch here in the spring at the Iowa City Library.
We are building ours right now. There will be a soft launch at the end of the month, and then it'll get all sorts of PR. But by the end of the summer, if you have seeds, we'll take them.
And then in the meantime, like I mentioned, I'm from Linn County. I know all of the Linn County libraries have one. Well, not all of them. I should be more specific to Cedar Rapids, Hiawatha, and Marion all have seed libraries as well. The buckwheat to smother. Do I till first or just collect scatter seeds in the spring? That is the method that I mentioned that we're going to till. And then we're going to do buckwheat. So ideally we're tilling, and then the buckwheat can go in as early as March. Buckwheat is a very cold hardy crop, so the earlier you get it in, the better. Do you have any suggestions for those of us who are mostly shaded? Nope. Like I did mention that, that website earlier. There are some shade-tolerant plants that you can use. However, in all of the prairie restoration that I've ever done, I've only worked in sunny areas, so I don't have that experience to be able to say. That website that I mentioned earlier, the University of Iowa website, does have everything that you could need to know about all the different types of plants. So I'm sure that there's some way that you can find and filter for shade plants. Because you can filter for, you know, wet plants, dry plants, all kinds of different plants. So I can't answer that one. I apologize. Tell us what native plants you put in your raised beds. Ooh, that's a good question. Wild ginger is one of my favorites. I also have a propensity for dry plants, especially in raised beds. If you use a more sandy soil, one of my favorites is, oh gosh, it's called the common name is rattlesnake master, but that's one of my favorites. It's very bird-centric. The birds love perching on that guy because it's very sturdy, and it grows a lot taller than everything else. And the really cool thing is at the end of the summer, those seed heads, when you take them off, they rattle. It's fun for kids and stuff. Other native plants, always coneflower, always. It's good looking and it's wonderful for the pollinators. Trying to think. I'd say those are my favorites, but I mean, really, I've got a long list of things that are in my raised beds. An alternative, hold on one sec. An alternative to mowing is to leave stems all winter and then use a hedge trimmer or string trimmer to mow them off once temperatures are in the 50s so pollinators can live in the winter. Yeah, actually, that is a very good point. If you are doing mowing in your microprairie, the best time to do it is in, like, closer to the spring. A lot of pollinators live in dead brush, in and around dead brush. So by mowing in the fall, you're actually ruining some of the habitat for them. Ideally, once the temperatures get up to 50, and I should probably put that in my PowerPoint as well, in terms of mowing, that the pollinators would be able to live without that shelter, essentially. So this was more of a statement, not a question. Can you burn a lawn before planting? The only reason I didn't mention burns is because I cannot recommend that you do a burn. Reaching out to your local conservation society, the Johnson County Conservation, can help you out with that. They would be in touch with your fire marshals and everything, making sure that everything is the way it's supposed to go. But unfortunately, I cannot recommend burning anything. It is wonderful for your prairie, but just being smart about it, okay? Calling the right people.
Especially if you live in town.
Especially if you live in town. Especially if you live in town. You don't want to, yeah, and not on a windy day. But ideally, if you're working with those people, if you reach out to your conservation society, somebody will help you figure out what it is that you need to do to get that done. So the answer to that question is yes, but there's some asterisks, making sure that you have the right stuff and the right people. Plants for clay soil. That is another very good question. We do have a lot of more clay soil across the state. Off the top of my head, gosh, now I can't think. Plants for clay soil. See, I'm just going to use that Iowa website that I told you guys about earlier. Yeah, I would highly recommend, again, the University of Iowa website that I mentioned earlier. It looks like some of them that might be good would be something like a field thistle or
Also gypsum.
gypsum. Yeah, that's another good one.
Gypsum is an amenitive that will help break up clay, but you'll want to dig it in.
Yeah, hyssop would be another one. You're going to want to get it a good base, though. I know lead plant can be a particularly good one for clay-based soils. Those are the only ones I got for now until I do a little bit more research. I can send you, again, whoever was asking the questions about clay soil, the slide that I had of like the dry areas, your clay is going to be a very dry area because once it becomes compact, it doesn't really get any of that moisture back. So really looking for anything that would thrive in a low moisture environment. And then back to the other one, the shady areas one, the two that I couldn't answer. Again, just being knowledgeable on those, looking up the plants before you put them in, knowing how they want to grow, essentially, and that University of Iowa webpage is more than I could ever recommend. So that's it. I think that's it. Did I not get to anybody's? No, I think shade. Good source of free cardboard. That was another. Grocery stores.
Costco.
Costco. Oh my gosh, Costco. All day. Costco, Aldi, wonderful places. Any grocery store. Make sure that when you are, if you are using cardboard, you're using the flat brown cardboard, okay? The cereal box type stuff is a no-go. You do not want to put that out because it's typically coated in some sort of plastic to protect the surface, so it's not going to break down the way you hope it will. So just making sure that if you are doing cardboard, getting that nice like corrugated brown cardboard. Yes?
On one of your slides, it said winged loosestrife was a good thing, but I had a beautiful loosestrife once, lifeless, right? And I was told, get that out of your yard, it's a terrible invasive, it takes over waterways, which I never have seen anywhere.
Yes, so there is some debate on different, that again goes back to cultivars. So there's different types of loosestrife. I did actually get that question when I presented to the Master Gardeners, and we talked about the different types of loosestrife. So it really depends on what type it is that you've planted. Whoever it was that told you to get rid of it immediately, I would get a second opinion because, yeah, or if you can properly identify which cultivar it is that you're looking at. So loosestrife, again, just knowing which cultivar it is that you have. Yeah. So there are some invasive loosestrifes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the loosestrife that you have is invasive.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I have an announcement about Burr Oak Land Trust. They're having a biodiversity project on Friday, April 4th. You need to register, so go to their website, Burr Oak Land Trust. There's some free gifts for those who register, and there is no charge for this program. So be aware of that. Also, if you are looking for inspiration, check out YouTube Iowa City Lawn Loves. You'll find numerous 2 to 4 minute videos of different kinds of plantings that are cool and neat to do. And I want to give a shout out to Johnson County Planning, Development, and Sustainability. Look up their Pocket Prairie program. They do have some different types of plants that will do well in shade. And if you live in the county, in unincorporated areas, they will have a grant program available. And I believe that's going to open in July. So you'll want to watch that website too.